Welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining us in this live TV handover of the Scientific Advice Mechanism Opinion on Advanced Materials. Advanced materials, they're present everywhere in our daily lives, from biomaterials for drug delivery and to the next generation of batteries. As such, they are essential for Europe's autonomy, competitiveness and resilience. In March of last year, the Commission asked the Scientific Advice Mechanism, we call it SAM, by the way, for short, to provide recommendations to support some upcoming legislation known as the Advanced Materials Act. The SAM is a unique scientific advisory body providing independent advice to the College of Commissioners. It's made up of a group of chief scientific advisors from outside the Commission and a consortium of science academy networks from all around the EU called SAPEA. And I'm very welcome and very happy to welcome our panel today. First of all, on my right, Ekaterina Zaharieva. She's the European Commissioner for Startups, Research and Innovation. Welcome, Commissioner. Professor OLLI IKKALA. He's a distinguished professor at the Department of Applied Physics in Aalto University and chair of the Science Advice for Policy for European Academies Working Group on Advanced Materials. And again on my left, Professor NAOMI ELLEMERS. She is a distinguished professor of social and behavioral sciences at Utrecht University and chair of the group of chief scientific advisors. We shall be spending about half an hour together, and I'll start with Commissioner Zaharieva. In March of last year, Commissioner, you called upon the SAM group of scientific advisors to produce a scientific opinion on advanced materials. Why is it so important for you to request such an advice in order to take political decisions?
First of all, thank you, Joanna, and thanks to the whole DG that you're organizing this innovative presentation of the report. And of course, welcome to the two professors who are present here in our studio today, Professor ELLEMERS and Professor IKKALA. First of all, as you said, Joanna, in your introduction, advanced materials are everywhere. And the truth is that I think that we should speak more about what science is doing for the everyday life of European citizens. Especially now when, unfortunately, the core values of doing science and evidence-based policy making, scientific freedom is questioned. I think Europe has the duty to lead by example and to show that actually we take our political decisions based on evidence, based on the recommendation of our excellent science. So I think it's really important. That was the main reason. And because we really want, when we propose a new acts, a new recommendations, a new legislation, to propose the best that we can do. And what does it mean? That this means that we should ask actually the people who knows better than us what we need to continue leading in advanced materials in that case. As you said, they are everywhere, and Europe is leading here because in 2023, Europe accounted for over 30% of the global market share and held 15% of patents in advanced materials. And the European advanced materials market was valued at about 18 billion euro last year and is projected to surpass 32 billion euro by 2034. And as you said, they're critical for our energy transition, for our healthcare, for clean mobility, but also for European competitiveness. Especially in this geopolitical situation, we see how bad for our economy, for our everyday life is we to rely on raw materials which we don't control. And advanced materials are actually the chance for strengthened European independence. So that's why we request this report, and that's why we actually are working to propose a new Advanced Materials Act. And we want this act to be based on your report, on your recommendations. So that's why we actually asked our group of chief scientific advisors for the input on our proposal. And I really look forward for your introduction in your recommendations for our Advanced Materials Act.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for that introduction. I think you have framed it well, right into the heart of European competitiveness. And now I turn to you, Professor Ekaterina. You have been the chair of the working group on this subject matter. And we'd like you to talk about the recommendations. But first, I would like you to talk to us about these materials themselves. Remind us, what are these materials? What exactly are they?
Thank you. Advanced materials are materials that have been engineered for very specific and high-tech properties. So they are not just made trial and error mixtures of something to have something. So they can be very different. They can be ceramics, they can be metals, they can be RNA for a certain application, biomedical application. And perhaps it could be most clearly given some examples. For example, there would be no jet engines without advanced metals. There would be no implants for healthcare. There would be no solar cells for energy and no batteries. And most recently, the very important thing which is emerging is sustainability, which means that we have to take materials which are compatible with nature and safe and don't have any toxic components or undue energy consumption.
Thank you very much, Professor Ekaterina, for that very clear explanation. Now, we've heard already Commissioner Zaharieva in her introduction and her framing. She stressed the importance of advanced materials for the EU's strategic autonomy and competitiveness. And perhaps you could tell us more about that from your end. Which advanced materials do you see as being particularly important for the competitiveness of the European Union?
Yeah, so as you said, advanced materials are globally pursued. They are very important everywhere. I could mention a few examples why advanced materials are important for Europe. So we see the vulnerable situation, geopolitical situation in Europe these days, because some of the advanced materials are critically dependent, also called critical rare materials. So there are examples for example, lithium, which is used in batteries, cobalt is used in the magnets, which are used in the wind turbines, and so on. Then there comes a question how European resilience could be improved. Of course, there's a continuous development for advanced materials to replace those critical materials because it's not sustainable anywhere to have extensive mining of those. But these routes can be rather long. More straightforward route would be recirculation of the materials. Think about that, let's say, instead of just throwing the electronics devices away or magnets away or some other devices away, we would just organize recollection or reuse of those materials. And why Europe could be good? Because we are a well-organized continent. And therefore, sustainability and recirculation is important in our case. Also think about that in some cases, even, for example, taking the food industry, there's lots of side products which can't be eaten, but they could be used for starting materials for plastics and polymers. So there are several cases that waste for some industry is useful raw material for another industry. So we should be able to create synergies between different industries. And this is, in fact, the core of the recirculation. And Europe can be prepared for that because we have all those facilities to be organized. There's also another aspect which is, leads the question of digitalization. So we always think about, if we hear the word digitalization, is that it's a social media and it is just information. But there's also materials properties which are kind of related to those. And then we need to develop automatic laboratories. We need to, Europe is strong in fundamental science. We need to benefit of that. And a new aspect is coming also defense, because we need to promote that. But we have to be very careful that we have the proper legislation to promote the transition to technology, but not over-regulate.
Thank you so much, Professor IKKALA. You have introduced so many aspects: circularity, the organisation of Europe, the right legislative framework, and the need to also remain sustainable. I turn now also to Professor ELLEMERS. Professor ELLEMERS, you are the chair of the group of chief scientific advisors. It is clear up to now that the EU needs to secure a strategic autonomy, but also competitiveness. But we also need to stay on track on our climate obligations, on our sustainability goals as well, which are relevant to the Green Deal commitments. So may I ask you, what is the main group's views on this, on how to achieve these objectives?
Yes, and so we started, of course, with the evidence review. But we realized actually that there are many strengths in the EU and that we can build on those strengths. And that's not just when you think about research institutions or infrastructures for research, but also the strength of the EU in leading in standards, leading in regulation, leading in tools and databases for research, digital tools. And so these are very strong building blocks that can be used. And so based on these building blocks, we realized it's possible to build a more integrated ecosystem that combines research with product development, but also that preserves EU values, that is really focusing on things like safety and sustainability, on transparency, on high production standards. And this is where Europe could be leading actually this development. And if we build that ecosystem in the right way, we can accelerate responsible innovation. And that would really be a long-term benefit, not just for the researchers or for the investors, but also for the consumers, also for the regulators, and also for the citizens of Europe in the end. And so this value-based approach, which is very characteristic for the EU, we think that's the key driver to benefit from and to have these advanced materials as a key ingredient for prosperity in Europe.
Professor ELLEMERS, you have highlighted another part, if you like, of the importance of this subject matter for Europe. You have looked at the values now. And of course, when we talk about technological development and values, sometimes it becomes challenging, especially when multiple actors and trade-offs are involved. So if we had to be a bit more practical, how does the group propose to achieve these key objectives? It's a challenge.
Yes, well, thank you for the question. And we thought about that very hard. And we tried to make it very practical. And we identified 4 different areas where we think more attention is needed to make this more effective. The first area we identified is the data infrastructure. So Professor IKKALA already explained how important the data is and the information is embedded in the materials. And we really need some decisive action here to deliver on the promise of using these data embedded in the advanced materials. And so, of course, the digital tools and the computational approaches, they can be used to accelerate discovery of new materials, but they can also be used for early risk screening. And this is very important because that can help prioritize the development of the materials that are already safe and sustainable. So that's the first area. The second area that needs attention is the comparative advantage of Europe in standards and in digital product passports. And these already exist, of course, but we think they can be used better to perform better in this sense. We can use these to create rules that are clear and based on performance, and to make the flow of information more transparent, which will also benefit the rapid evaluation for regulations purposes. And so this could help create some kind of virtuous cycle where the materials that are more durable and less toxic and easier to repair are prioritized and more likely to succeed. And then we would end up with very high quality European products that can be a benchmark, a global benchmark to follow up. So that was the second area. Now, the third area where we think action is needed is the path from the world of research to the global market. And so connecting the research to the product. There is so much high quality, top quality research in Europe, but what we need is to turn them into products that are marketable. And so here I come to the ecosystem that I already mentioned, which will help to turn the promising materials into products that are sustainable and certifiable without a lot of delays. And to make that happen, we need to better coordinate the different infrastructures. We need more industry partnerships, we need better procurement procedures, and we need business models that prioritize circularity as a matter of design. The final area where we need attention is the research area, and to ensure that there is more coherence in the funding landscape for research and innovation. And this will be a long-term investment for the capacity in basic research, but also to educate the people who are able to work with these materials and to make this happen. So those are the four areas that need attention: data, standards, markets, and research. And it's a lot of work to be done, but if we make this investment, we will build on the strengths and we will really be able to lead from Europe.
Professors IKKALA and ELLEMERS, I think you have given us a lot to chew on, a lot for the European leaders to chew on going forward. Thanks for the inspiration. You said data, standards, market, research. I'll turn to you now again, Professor IKKALA. We have talked a lot about competitiveness and a lot about strategic autonomy. You personally have had extensive experience in conducting research from biomaterials to polymers. Now, in your perspective as a researcher, how could the Advanced Materials Act translate to practical outcomes in your work?
Thank you. I have indeed been combining chemistry, physics and biology to make materials what we can call bio-inspired materials. So, for example, to make plant-based colors to replace oil-based dyes, which are environmental hurdle. Making also biomedical materials, for example, for breast cancer or immunology, what we are trying to do, and also new types of battery materials. So I have very much enjoyed the research infrastructure in Europe, just to give a positive feedback, because the ERC granting is extremely competitive, but when one gets competitive, then it's very supportive. But there are some hurdles in the European system. For example, the nanomaterials, which we use in every day in our research. The legislation is sometimes a little bit obscure. And for example, in my real research, I have found a problem that some of the materials which should not be kind of prohibited, in fact, due to some curious legislation or reasons, they are in fact prohibited in Europe, not in China, not in the USA. So I would kind of, let's say, very much, I see the problem of making a extremely highly qualified legislation. They need the brightest brains in Europe to make the good legislation. But I see lots of things to be done to let's say, have good but not unduly limiting legislations.
I think a very good word for advice for us all. I now turn to you, Professor ELLEMERS, and as chair of the group of chief scientific advisors, we have heard, as we have all, the concrete example of scientific input to support policy making, a big subject. Based on your experience as chair of the group of chief scientific advisors and also your involvement in this actual opinion on advanced materials, how do you see the role of scientific advice in the shaping of EU policies such as Advanced Materials Act in particular?
Well, to start more generally perhaps, when we look back at development of technology and policies from the past, we can see what was working and what was less successful. And then we notice that the effectiveness of any innovation policy depends also on things like trust, social acceptance, political support all around Europe. And so I expect it will also be the case for these advanced materials policies. Mm-hmm. And so engaging science to inform this type of policy, I think it's very important because it opens openness, transparency about the issues that need to be considered. And it would benefit the discussion about the different types of risks, how to weigh them, what are the possible advantages, and to have this discussion. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with this opinion on advanced materials. And so we take a very broad approach to the research. We highlight findings from many different fields. So it's not just the hard science, but it's also about what are the economic implications, what are the social implications, what are the environmental implications. And there's also science on all these aspects that we try to combine here. And we think this is important to facilitate also this constructive dialogue about the new technology, about the different dimensions, how they can be taken into account and what it means for the different stakeholders who need to support that.
Thank you so much, Professor ELLEMERS, for reminding us of the things maybe that we take for granted. You know, the trust that we have to build, the dialogue that we need to have between the different stakeholders and between the legislator and the scientists. And it's good to see that the SAM is playing a role in this as well, and also supporting the development of very good, hopefully, EU policies with impact, and also to underpin them with scientific evidence. But now I turn to you, Commissioner Zaharieva. You have been very attentively listening to all these advices, like I have as well, and learning. But I'd like you to take a step back for you. You are the legislator. You are the proposer of legislation. You are the person who's making policy decisions. What would you like to share with us in your conclusions today?
First of all, thank you for your report. Enormous big work has been done, and I was really enjoying listening to your advices. I would say I will agree with everything what you said. First of all, the advantages that we have in Europe. And I really believe, and thank you for speaking so positively about that. We know that we have challenges, but we have much more advantages. And I think even now, when it's politically unstable around us, more and more people turn eye on Europe, and I hear more and more often you have duties, and also you are the best place for investment. That means that you're a reliable partner, that you have high standards with what you started about the high standards that we have, sustainability, safety, and we have to keep them, but at the same time, as you rightly say, Professor, we have really to look at our legislation and really adapt it if it's needed, keeping the high standards, keeping the brand name that we have, as Europe means high standards, sustainability, safety, but also enable the development and deployment of innovation. And this is exactly what we plan to do. And I will start, for example, access to the market, how fast we deploy, how excellent results from the research to the market, how fast we are able to make these products and reach the market. EU Inc., the 28th regime, which hopefully will be adopted very soon by the co-legislators, and will really help our innovators, innovative companies to access the market, the 27 member states, very, very fast. And you also mentioned this scaling issue. I mean, because it takes time and it is really sometimes very capital intensive from these discoveries to reach the market. So this means support. You mentioned Horizon Europe and the European Research Council. That's why the Commission did propose to double the budget for European Research Council and the whole Horizon, because we really believe that we should support our scientists, that we should help them to link to each other, because this program is very competitive, as you rightly said, but I think it has also another strength. This is the only program in the world that can bring together even competitors to work together to find solutions on the global challenges and the common challenges. This makes this program very unique, I believe. And also, I think we also, of course, invest a lot through Horizon Europe. I think 4 billion in advanced materials since 2021. But we should, I think, even increase this support, because our main competitors are also investing heavily in advanced materials research. And we work also on to support our innovators and to scale, to find the needed resources here, not to be, so to say, pressed to leave Europe when they want to scale and look for capital. We are working on the Scale Up Europe Fund. So I think we are really trying to address the challenges that we all have. And you mentioned also talent. I think this the best that we have. And I really believe that the global competition is not that much about the resources or about the capital, it's about the talent. Because without our researchers, without our innovators, we are not able to achieve anything. So this is something that we are really focused on, how to attract the best talent in Europe, not only through the infrastructures, through the funds, through the programs, but I think through the keeping the values alive, scientific freedom, that we plan to embed in the European law, in the European Research Area Act, creating the ecosystem, support, and everything that we, it's really dear to our heart and I'm pretty much sure to yours as well. So to conclude, sorry that I talk too much at the end, but I decided to skip my introduction because I really wanted to listen to you more. We thank you for your excellent report and for your advices, and I can reassure you that we, with your help, with your support, we will try to propose the best legislation that will enable research innovation and help deployment on the market.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Zaharieva. Those are very encouraging words for our scientists and for scientific advice. And also your words about Europe being also the enabler of bringing scientists together and also the best scientific knowledge and the best scientific advice as well. I think these are things that we should not overlook and we should treasure and we should even use more. And thank you also for reminding us about the talent that we have and that we need to preserve it even more and keep it also in Europe. I think that is also a very important word. One word about democracy. I think this is a European value. And it's important also for science, which is an enabler for democratic policy making. And I know that many people are waiting for this advice, for this recommendation with interest. So this is a file we'll all be following very closely.
Allow me,
yes.
Not in the program, something that I really forgot to say, and I planned it to say. You talk about trust, and I really believe it's key. And I'm very grateful that you really managed to explain very easy and everybody can understand exactly what advanced materials are. And I really believe to keep the trust in science, high trust in science, which is questions non-stop. And it starts since not a year ago. It starts, unfortunately, it was very visible during COVID, but it starts before that. And we should first explain every day. We should really provide the needed ground for the scientists to talk, to discuss. And also, when I meet the scientists or the organizations, my request to them, it's always, please talk more. I mean, go to the media, explain to the citizens what you're doing. And this is really very needed, especially now, and even more than during COVID. So thank you so much that you were able really to explain your work so simple that everybody, including people as me, I'm not a scientist, can understand your work.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Zaharieva. Thank you, Professors IKKALA and ELLEMERS, for actually bringing science to us, to the people, and using the European platform for that as well. We're all very proud of that. Thank you so much, and many thanks to you, Commissioner Zaharieva, and for your time. You're sharing your thoughts as well with us, and also the feedback on these recommendations. Finally, many thanks to our audience for staying with us. Thank you very much to all of you, and have a very good afternoon.